episode 12 of Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year, where your guest and host is myself, Shan, the creator and founder of A Different Kind of Gap Year. I thought it was about time that I came back on the show to share with you a few things. So I think it has been well over 6 months since I've done an episode featuring myself. I think it was episode 6 in October of last year before I took a bit of leave, that I was the feature as well, and shared with you a bit of where I was at the time and what I had learnt as well along the way in my recovery. So yeah, this is episode 12, so a bit of capping off this second series of Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year before I take a bit of a leave again. To practice what I preach, to have a bit of rest. But today is a huge celebration, basically, of quite a few milestones that Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year has achieved, which one of them is our first birthday for the podcast. So June the 10th was when I first released episode 1, which was featuring my burnout experience back in the day when it was all fresh and raw. So yeah, it's been 12 months. And there's a few other milestones that I want to share with you as well. So we'll be celebrating that. Also, I want to share with you a bit of where I'm at right now. So a bit of a here and now, how I'm doing. And last but not least, I want to share with you a bit of an exclusive. I haven't shared this yet about where things are going with Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year. So stay tuned for that. Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year podcast turns 1 right now. It's been 1 year since I launched the very first episode, and I'm super proud. And I was about to say I didn't know if I'd get here, but no, I knew that this was something that I wanted to do, and it was just whether it had legs to continue. So I'm very grateful that I'm still doing this 12 months on, still able to deliver this podcast to you. So happy birthday to A Different Kind of Gap Year Burnout podcast. And I've got a little bit of cake here to celebrate. Now, this is a mango passion fruit cheesecake. I'm a big fan of it, from the Cheesecake Shop, of course. I didn't make it myself. I'm not that great at, I'm sure I could cook it if I really wanted to, but I don't. And there's also licorice all sorts, which is a bit of a favourite lolly of mine. So I'm going to blow out the candle and make a wish for Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year. So there's that birthday, but also there's a few other milestones that have been reached in terms of Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year over the last few months, which I haven't or neglected to share. First one that I want to share is for the blog, which is of the same name, Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year. It's been well over a year since I released my first blog, which was called The Awakening, which was about leaving work, having to leave work because of my burnout. So that was March the 11th. Even though that was publicized, like it was up on my website and anybody could access it, I didn't start letting people know about the blog till probably a few weeks later, when I started to use social media and sharing it there. So I'm not sure exactly what dates they were. I think it was late March. And it took me a while till I shared it on my personal social media accounts to let my family and friends know about it as well. So it was a bit of a trickle, but it's been well over a year since doing the blog. And I did take a hiatus from the blog for a little bit because I didn't feel it was necessary for me to write it, and I needed a bit of a break because I've always written the blog to help myself process in the moment what I'm going through. So yeah, I didn't need it, so I didn't think it was any point writing when you don't need to. But I have recently started that back up. I call it the Burnout Prevention Diaries now, and share, because again, I'm finding that a helpful tool to support my mental health. So yeah, the blog itself has been going for some time, and there's well over, I think there's 50 plus posts now. So if you haven't read them all and would like to, feel free to go to my website to read up on the blog. So some other milestones. Well, my social media, as I mentioned, started that in March, and I actually started off with Twitter. Would you believe? That was interesting. Not sure what I was thinking there, but it was an interesting mix of people that you got there. But I decided it was best to stick to Instagram and Facebook. So I started the Burnout, different kind of gap year, Instagram and Facebook to help promote the blog and podcast, but also just to share and for me to process and share things that were helpful on there. So they're still going as well, so well over a year. Now, there's something like 360 plus followers on both my Instagram and Facebook account. Not very big in terms of, I suppose, other accounts, but I don't, well, I try not to care how many people follow. It's more about, the people who find it helpful, who find it to be supportive for them in their world. Those are the people I want following, that they find something that I share helpful to them. So so thank you to each and every one of you for following my social media accounts. I appreciate it. Uh, with the blog, I have about 46 subscribers now to the blog who want to stay tuned for when the next release. So thank you to you guys for coming on board with the blog. And there's about 100 plus podcast followers across the platforms that Burnout Different Kind of Gap Year is up on. So that's Apple, SoundCloud, Spotify, and Amazon Music. So, and about 4,000 plus plays across those platforms as well. So, people streaming and listening in. So, thank you very much to each and every one of you for tuning in, because you make this reality, which I absolutely love, a dream that is more than a dream, it's actually reality. So, and a dream I never actually thought I would be doing, podcaster, blogger, but I love to write, I love to share, I love to talk, and I like to listen to other people who've got experiences to share that could help others. So I love having those kind of real, deep kind of conversations. So it's filling my bucket, and I hope it's filling yours as well. So happy birthday to a different kind of gap year, and here's to many, many more milestones to be reached. Thank you. Okay, so now I want to share a little bit about where I'm at. And today I want to share my accomplishments or the milestones that I've achieved in terms of my health and well-being. And I'm doing that because, first of all, I have a tendency, and I have been of late, caught up on where I'm not at, or the gaps that still exist, and the growth that hasn't happened, or the destination that hasn't been reached yet. And I'm realizing that this tendency doesn't actually help me, and it robs me of my well-being in the moment. So I'm wanting to focus more on the present. But in the present today, I want to choose to acknowledge what growth has achieved since I abruptly left my career due to my burnout early last year. So that is what I want to share with you. With where I'm at is more of about growth, and I encourage you, if you're like me and tend to focus on those deficits that you haven't achieved yet, that give this a go. Focus on your growth. I'm all about modeling healthy behavior, so I'm trying to do that today. Uh, So, one of the things that I'm really proud of myself for over the last year is the dedication and commitment I made to myself, and actually to my friends and family and previous clients, and that was to get the help that I needed to do better, to be better, to feel better, and that was going to therapy. And I'm immensely grateful to Dr. Carla Johnston. That luck would have it was my first psychologist that I went and saw was a person who could help guide me towards the growth that I did achieve. Yeah, and so I'm really proud because that took, of course, my engagement in it and my willingness to share my deepest, darkest secrets or things that I hadn't shared with others. And I did so with her to help me heal. And I am so glad that she was a person who, or is a person who, is very safe, and you feel very well supported and secure in her presence. And she had the expertise to be able to guide me through to my healing. So yeah, I'm really grateful that I had a really positive experience with therapy, and that it helped me amongst everything else. So yeah, proud of myself for doing that, and facing a lot of fears there to get the growth that I did. I'm also really proud of myself for engaging in my journal, which is my blog, where I chose to, on at least a weekly basis or as often as I needed to share with my computer, basically, my thoughts and feelings to help me process what was going on for me. And at times I didn't want to do this. I didn't want to engage in it for various reasons. Usually I just wanted to avoid what I was feeling or thinking, or whatever was going on. But that eventually choosing that and writing it out, because I know without that journal, I would not have been able to discover some of the things that were going on for me that weren't healthy, and I wouldn't have been able to work through them. So I found that tool and still find that tool very invaluable. So I'm proud of myself for committing to that in which is uncomfortable, but that is something that was and is providing support for me. So yeah, good old journaling, which as a psychologist is something we often recommend to our clients, but not something I had taken up for myself because at the time I didn't think it was necessary. So yeah, very proud of that commitment to that practice. I suppose one of the things that I'm immensely proud of as well is that I shared my story, that I spoke out about my burnout to recovery, and have done so on a lot of forums. There were some that came easier than others. Certainly the public forum was the most easiest for me. So I remember sharing my blog and podcast first only with whoever in my social media was connected to me. And I don't think it was till a little bit later on that I shared it with my friends and family, because that was actually that wasn't the scariest. That was the next scariest. But the scariest was actually sharing it with my psych peers, because I felt like, or I assumed that they would be the ones that may. Actually, I don't think it was that I feared them judging me. I did fear them judging me, but it wasn't that I would think that they would do that. But I suppose I was scared that someone would, and they would see me less than or incapable or not enough, bad, a psychologist or something like that. So that was the hardest to share. And actually only did that, I think, earlier this year, is shared the podcast to my network of psychology friends outside of my social network. So some of them knew. But those are the ones that I am closer to. But this was the wider public network of psychologists that I'm linked to in Queensland. So anyway, that was huge. And I did so. What motivated me is, and always seems to motivate me, is a combination of this will help others, but will also help me. And I suppose it helped me because I need to break through that fear of people judging me. And you can only do that through actually taking that step, and seeing that the evidence, whether it's there or not, and someone's always going to judge, but the majority of the feedback, and was one of support and encouragement, and thanking me for sharing my story. So sharing my burnout to recovery experience with others, either on a public forum, family, peers, or even just chatting about it to anyone who wants to listen. I'm happy to share that. So yeah, I'm really proud that I've worked through some difficult emotions and beliefs to do that, because it certainly helped me. I'm also really proud of myself for committing to my promise to not work as a counsellor in a psychologist position, providing therapy for others for at least 12 months. I'm proud of this because this helped me focus on caring for myself, but not just caring for myself, but also doing the work necessary to not be in that position again where my health was so bad that it impacted negatively on others who are vulnerable, which, my clients being them. So although I couldn't change what happened, and I'll always be, certainly sorry for the impact that leaving because of my health had on them, I am proud that I committed to not practicing in order to do the work necessary. So if I choose to go back, I will be a healthier psychologist for those I see in the future. So I'm proud that I stuck to that commitment, because there were times where I felt pulled to go back financially, because I certainly was in a better financial position when I was working as a clinical psychologist in private practice. And this last year has been tough on the finances for myself and my family. We've gotten through, we're okay, but it hasn't been easy, and it certainly has an impact on my future. But anyway, health is priceless, so I'll focus on that. But yeah, I'm proud of that commitment to do the work, take the time off, and focus on being a healthier version of myself. One of the things that it was about, I think, July last year, so it's coming up to a 1 year anniversary for this as well, that I went back to work. I was feeling ready to return to work after about a few months away from working as a clinical psychologist. I was ready to return back to some sort of work, but not clinical work. But I wasn't sure what. I was always in those early stages. I felt pushed at the beginning by myself to find some sort of paid work, whether it's, stocking shelves at Woolies, or, walking dogs. And actually I did that for a bit, walking dogs. But I felt like I needed to contribute financially. And so I pushed myself to do things, which wasn't actually the healthiest choice. I eventually got it in me that I just needed to rest. That took a lot. So that's something I'm proud of too, is fighting through or resisting that urge to do what I normally do, which was to earn, be financially independent. And in this case, although that can be a good thing, in this case it was the wrong thing, and I needed to rest. But with the encouragement of my husband and loved ones and my psychologist, I took that 3 months off. But coming back, at some point I did feel ready to do some sort of work, and I felt like this might be more entry level stuff, just something to, a bit of a routine, having a bit of an income, but just felt like I had some energy to give, and I just needed to find something. And one of the jobs I went for is a coffee distributor, so it was things like that. But also I decided at one stage to look into teaching, because that was something I was exploring before I burnt out, to diversify a bit in my career, was looking at teaching avenues. So I started to explore that. And anyway, I scored a teaching job, a lecturing job, at a little boutique tertiary institution in Australia. They're an online one, teaching counsellors. And I've been doing that just on a part-time basis. I realise I used the word just there. I am working on a part-time basis 3 days a week because that's what I was thinking and listening to myself, and that's what I could do. And yeah, and so I've been in that job now for a year, and I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that I found something that was conducive to my health and well-being, that I could still bring in an income and contribute in that way, but also work in a field where I felt like I was contributing as well, but wasn't impacting in a way on my recovery. So yeah, and it was a very challenging job to begin with because there was a huge learning curve, and it was a bit of a dive into the deep end. But I had a supportive crew there that I was lucky to share an office with, and they really helped me. Yeah, and a shout out to Karen. Karen Kim. She was and still is a big supporter there at that work. So I'm very grateful to have that job and have that learning experience, and to be able to do something I love, which I love teaching. I do love imparting skills to others. So it's helped me learn a bit about myself as well. But yeah, there's that too. One of the other things that are coming up for me just now is that I'm really proud that I've made the choice to walk away from things that aren't serving me, even if it is painful to do so. And again, these have been things that are sort of gut instincts and based on what I notice the experience of doing or being with that person or doing that thing has on me, and listening to that experience rather than what my mind might be thinking I should do or shouldn't do or must do and that kind of thing. So, or what's right or wrong, listening more to my body and how that experience, that person makes me feel, and choosing to walk away or limit boundaries. Basically, applying boundaries is certainly been something that I've employed this year or this past year. So, yeah, but I've walked away from things that are no longer serving me. And one of these things was like early on in my burnout to recover experience, I had the opportunity to work with a friend, or who's become a friend, on starting up this new business. And like the business is a great idea, and I absolutely see the value in it, and I could see why I was attracted to it to begin with and wanting to work on it, and particularly wanting to work with this person who is certainly someone that I'd love to work with. I think she brings out, or yeah, she's certainly someone that helps me grow, and that's I think why I jumped at the chance, but I jumped too early. I wasn't ready, and to be able to make the commitment that was needed. And there was a point late last year where with a lot of nerves, with a lot of anxiety, I approached her and let her know that I couldn't, I didn't want to work on it anymore. I wanted to put it on hold. The funny thing was, we actually, when I talked to her, she was in the same place as well. So it was a mutual discussion and choice to put that on hold. So it's funny that, but I'm very proud to have listened to myself and taken the action needed to set that boundary. And it was a really great experience, which I didn't expect it not to be with this particular person. Shout out to Davina Donovan. She's a beautiful human being, so I felt safe enough to do that with her as well. But yeah, I've walked away or set boundaries on a lot of things that has helped, again, support my recovery, but support my ongoing mental health as well. So yeah, boundaries are very important, and then it's executing them, which can be extremely uncomfortable, but it's also extremely uncomfortable to stay in something that's no longer working. I think the other thing that I'm proud of is that in this gap year, I have focused on doing the things that were lacking in my life prior to burning out, that contributed to burning out. So this was things like establishing and maintaining friendships in my life. But before my gap year, I felt like I really didn't have friends. Like I make friends easy, and I've got people in my life, and my husband I consider to be my best friend, and my sisters, particularly my younger sister, spend a lot of time with, and we're close. But I suppose just friends, girlfriends, that you can catch up with. And I'm just really grateful that I've had the time, and I've chosen to focus on establishing them, because and knowing what actually I find valuable in a friend, and seeking out friendships and spending time with people that actually fill my cup, and breaking old habits of how I tended to act in my relationships that weren't healthy for me. So, yeah, I've done a lot of work in the friendship area, not just establishing them, but also working on my current relationships, and making sure that I'm engaging in behaviors that are healthy for me. Like in the past, I would engage in relationships in a way that, what can I do for them? And that's the way you establish friendships. And it's like, that was quite one-sided and unhealthy, and a lot of the times that would not be helpful for me, and a lot of that suffering was coming from my own choice to approach relationships in that way. So I'm certainly not doing that anymore, or working very hard not to do that, and finding and establishing some really cool friendships and spending time with those people. So yeah, there is that as well. But one of the other things that I'm proud of is, in terms of my career, in terms of my work, that although it's been extremely hard to not know what the hell I'm doing there, and I still don't know, I'm coming to terms with that. That's okay, and maybe I'm not meant to know. But if that makes sense. But what I'm proud of is that I'm coming to know a bit more, and connected with a bit more about what I actually do want and like, and in a career, and or in work, and what actually gives me joy, and that's important, or more important to me than anything else. So, and I'm learning about what those things are, which are the complete opposite often to what I was actually, or what I thought I liked, and what I actually was doing. So yeah, I'm connecting a lot more to my career or work life in so many ways, even though there's not a clear image of that yet. But in some ways there is. That's still a bit of a confusing thing for me at the moment. But I'm really grateful that I'm truly connecting with what brings me joy in that work life as well. So yeah, stay tuned with what that would look like as well. But the last thing I really want to share with you today, and that I'm proud of as well, is this podcast, is Burnout, a Different Kind of Gap Year. I love this work. It provides a lot of things that bring me joy, and my husband, my best supporter, my best friend, has noticed this, and has encouraged me to continue doing this work, and that has helped me to continue doing it when sometimes I thought, well, I should be going to get a real job and something that earns me money. So anyway, so I'm immensely proud of this podcast. I love meeting the people, the guests, and sharing their vulnerability with you, and seeing that with them, in doing so, how that helps them, but then how it helps my listeners, and people writing to me telling me, how that has helped them. So yeah, I really, it allows me to help people, but it also allows me to learn new skills. It allows me to, become like an interviewer, and to learn how to edit, and to network and things like that. So yeah, I'm learning new skills, and I'm persevering through them, because I'm not a big fan of patience with myself and learning new things, but that is something that I've done better at over the last year. I feel like there is so many proud moments that I am going to miss sharing with you, but I think I've shared enough of my proud moments. It is something that I found, and still feel deeply somewhat uncomfortable with doing, I think I mentioned earlier the importance of as to why I've chosen to do this, even though it's extremely uncomfortable for me to do so, is that I feel it is important for our well-being to focus on what we have, achieved, how we have grown, even if we're not in the place we think we should be right now. Uh, but yeah, like, because we're, hopefully always growing and always achieving, no matter how big or small. So yeah, there's, I'm sure, heaps of moments of that I can look back on and be proud of, and some are just very small moments, like choosing to not engage in work and just rest. When I, like, just the other day when I felt like I should be working on the podcast, and I chose to go out supping with my dogs, and that's huge for me, to not choose work even now. uh, to not do that, to not be productive. So changing those old behaviors, and that goal of achieving, being connected to myself, to discover me, and to be proud of me, certainly have, to a lot of degrees, achieved. Certainly I am more connected with myself than I have ever been. I do love myself, and I appreciate myself, and I believe in myself now. And I am proud of myself as well, even though it's uncomfortable to say that. Uh, this gap year has certainly been very beneficial for me. Without it, I wouldn't have had the space and time to devote to connecting with myself, to do the work necessary to be the healthy version that stands in front of, or sits in front of you today. Uh, that doesn't mean that there isn't bad days, because there are, and that is life. But that I am definitely a lot more connected with myself, a lot more proud of myself, a lot more aware of myself, and what I need, and willing to give that to myself as well. So, yay for me. And last but not least, I want to share with you today some exciting and exclusive news for you today, which is that everything Burnout, a different kind of gap year. So the blog, podcast, and whatever future content is created by me under this brand is moving to Patreon. Now, for those who haven't heard of Patreon, which I hadn't until my husband introduced it to me probably a few months ago now, is a platform in which creators like myself can launch their content and do so whilst earning some money, in order to be able to continue to do their content and provide that for their patrons, who are members, who become members. So I am hoping to launch this early in the second half of this year. And in order to stay tuned to, what this is all going to look like, and when that release date will be, please follow me on my social media if you don't already. So Instagram is at Burnout, a different kind of gap year, or Facebook, which is, I think, Career Burnout, a different kind of gap year. But you'll find this all on my website, which is www.adifferentkindofgapyear.com. So yeah, I'm hoping to move into doing everything that is a different kind of gap year, full time eventually. I'd love to, but just starting off, with continuing doing what I'm doing and build from there. It'd be a dream to be able to continue doing this work, and to create more content to expand this brand. And I see it going in places. So if I can get a bit of income to help me support in going that way, to be able to provide help and support out there in the community, to help prevent and look after ourselves, in this way, through a podcast, blog, and whatever, be a dream come true. So stay tuned for that. But that concludes my episode for today. So celebrating everything that has been happening for me, but also with the podcast and blog over the last 12 months or plus. I think this gap year is certainly extended in some ways. It's become more of a way of life to find that in which brings me joy, and doing the work to look after my mental health, which is essentially what this gap year has been about. But I want my life to be about that. So, I'm back in the game, and I'm working, and I'm doing things, but I'm doing them differently. So yeah, maybe I need to come up with a different name, or I just keep with that name. But thank you so much for listening. I welcome any feedback or comments, but stay tuned for new and improved different kind of gap year under the Patreon platform in the future. See ya.